spring of 1920, the Great War has ended, and the victors, Greece, France, Italy, and Great Britain, have tried to implement the partition of the Ottoman Empire, which was agreed at the Treaty of Sèvres. However, the Turks want no foreign powers on their soil, and the Greeks have started to move. Greek forces have been building up around Smyrna in western Anatolia, and they're about to push eastward to defeat the forces led by Mustafa Kemal. The Armenians are also organizing to fight for their independence against the Turks, all while the Russian Civil War rages on, and Bolshevik forces are pushing south against Georgia and Azerbaijan. Meanwhile, the Western powers sit comfortably in their enclaves in Anatolia, including the international zone around Constantinople. Circus Ethem rebellion. A rebellion breaks out against the leadership, and the imperialist player can pick any two Turkish nationalist irregular units from the force pool and deploy them in rebel mode within 2 hexes of Ankara, and these units cannot deploy in city hexes. Ankara cannot fall to the imperialist side, or the war will be over. Rebels deploy 60 miles to the east of Ankara, taking advantage of a river nearby. They're not strong enough to take the city by themselves. And the next event, and it's the Russo-Polish War. The Russo-Polish War distracts world attention. 5 Red Army units of any type are withdrawn, and these can be from the 9th or 11th Army. And 1 6-sided die is rolled for each withdrawn unit. On a 4 to 6, the unit will return as a reinforcement during the next game turn. On a 1 2 3, it will return 2 turns later. The Bolsheviks had amassed their 9th and 11th armies on its border with Georgia, and now they have to withdraw 5 units. And they withdraw 2 infantry, 2 cavalry divisions, and 1 supply column. The 9th Army's withdrawn units will arrive during the next turn, which is the summer of 1920. And the 11th Army unit and the supply column will arrive 1 turn later, in the fall of 1920. Now the sides receive replacements. The Turks receive 4 replacement points per turn until the Grand National Assembly event is in effect. Replacement points cannot be accumulated from turn to turn, so they have to all be spent each turn. So the Turks will bring a cavalry division, which is 2 steps, 1 air support unit, which counts as 1 step, and 1 supply column. Place the Turkish air support unit on the map to denote that it is available. The Turks will place a cavalry division in Ankara to take care of those pesky rebels. And the supply column is placed in Erzurum in the Armenian front. Now we check for replacement points for the Bolshevik Russians, and they receive 2 replacement points. And they will use the points to bring an air support unit and a supply column. And Russian units arrive on the northern edge inside Russia, and the supply column is placed to the northwest of Vladikavkaz. And we place the Bolshevik air support unit on the map to denote its availability. Now we check and place reinforcements for the imperialist side, and we start with Greece. 4 replacement points, and they bring on 2 air support markers and a full-strength infantry division. And the division can arrive in Thrace or in Smyrna, and it will be placed in Smyrna. And the 2 air support units are placed on the map. Next is Georgia. It only receives one replacement point, so it will bring one irregular unit, and it is placed together with other Georgian units in Sujumi. Azerbaijan receives one replacement point, and it'll be used to purchase a supply column, and it is placed in Ganja. Next is Armenia. It receives 4 replacement points, and note that if any of Kars, Erzurum, and or Van are occupied by Turkish nationalist forces, it is increased by 1. Erzurum is occupied by Turkish nationalist forces, so the Armenians have 5 replacement points, and they bring on 2 supply columns and 3 irregular units. Supply columns, one will be placed in Yerevan and the other one adjacent to Yerevan with an infantry unit. Now the 3 irregular units are placed on the map. On to the Imperialist movement / combat phase. And Imperialist units conduct movement and combat each faction one by one. We start with Georgia. Note that Georgia surrenders if any of Tiflis, Sujumi, or Batum are occupied by Bolshevik units. Here we see the positions of the Georgian units before movement. And here we see the position of the Georgian forces after movement. They will be, of course, making a stand here at Sujumi, and fortunately for them, in any event that Soviet forces attack them, they have naval gunfire of the French to use in their support. That would be a 1-column shift to the left if attacked in any coastal hex. Next to move are the Azerbaijanis. Note that they cannot move outside of their country. Here are the Azerbaijani units before movement, and here are their positions after movement, also guarding their border with Russia, and no need to guard the border with Georgia for now. Next is Armenia, and Armenian units cannot enter either Azerbaijan or Georgia. Most of the Turkish infantry divisions in Armenia are in mountain terrain, which provides a 2-column shift to the left. So the Armenians are thinking about pushing an attack against this cavalry regiment, which is in mountainous terrain but only has a defense strength of 1. We start by moving this irregular unit, its full movement allowance, here. And this other irregular unit will also join the first one. This cavalry brigade will move here. The Armenians have an infantry brigade that will also join the attackers. And they will use a supply column, which is here, but in order to support that attack, it has to be adjacent to the attackers, so it will move here. Now we move the rest of the Armenian units, mostly to plug this hole here in this line with this infantry brigade and this irregular unit. Now we go to the Armenian combat phase. And the Armenians will be attacking this Turkish cavalry regiment. And we begin with 5 combat factors to 1. So at the beginning, this attack is a 5-to-1 attack. However, the Turks are in the mountains. That's a 2-column shift to the left. That makes it a 3-to-1 attack. However, the Armenians have to use their supply column, and that has the effect of increasing the odds by 1 column. And the Turks could try to influence the combat with their air support marker, but they won't. So it will be a 4-to-1 attack. And we roll 1d6, and the result is a 2. Both sides lose 1 step. So the Turks have to remove 1 step, and the defending unit only has 1 step, and it is eliminated. And now the Armenians remove 1 of their irregular units, Because the supply column was used, it is also removed. Now the Armenians occupy the vacated hex. That's the end of the Armenian combat phase. Now it's the Greeks' turn to move. The Greeks begin by moving against the Turkish garrison at Edirne. In the Greek zone, the Greeks try to take advantage of a gap left in the Turkish lines in the southeast end. They move a cavalry brigade across the river to gain a flanking position on a regiment of Turkish irregulars. We'll be attacking the irregulars and the Turkish 57th Infantry Division. First, to the attack on the irregular regiment. A 4-to-1 attack into rough terrain, which is reduced to 3-to-1. The Greeks use their air support marker. Now we roll on the air support table because only one side placed an air support marker. There's a +1 die roll modifier. Roll is a 3 modified to a 4, a recon result. That means that any adjacent friendly land unit, which is adjacent to the attacking units but not adjacent to the defending units, can add its combat factors to this combat. But there are no Greek units that are adjacent to the attacking units which are not adjacent to the defending unit. So in that case, the odds remain at 3-to-1. We roll 1d6. The roll is a 2. Each side loses 1 step. Turkish defenders are eliminated, and the Greeks reduce their infantry unit and occupy the vacated hex. And the Greeks have used one of their 2 air support units. Next is the attack against the Turkish 57th Infantry Division and another irregular regiment. 12 attacking factors versus 5, 2-to-1, reduced to 1-to-1 because of the rough terrain, but increased to 2-to-1 because of the adjacent supply column that will be expended at the end of this combat. Now the Greeks use their 2nd air support unit, and the Turks decide to use their air support unit also. So now we roll on the air support table, and the roll is a 4, a recon result. Now the units in 1802 cannot be added because they're adjacent to the defending units. However, the 2 combat factors of the Greek 7th Infantry Division can be added. So that would make it a total of 13 to 5, 2-to-1, reduced to 1-to-1 because of the rough terrain, and increased to 2-to-1 because of the Greek supply column. So the attack remains at 2-to-1, and we roll 1d6. This time the Greeks suffered 2 step losses and the Turks 1, and the Greeks reduce their infantry divisions that are shown here on the top of their stacks. And the Greeks fail in dislodging the Turks from their positions. The supply column is spent. There's no more combat around the Greek zone. Now the Turks will try to see if the Edirne garrison surrenders without a fight, and this can only happen once during the game. 1d6 is rolled, and on a 3 to 6 the garrison surrenders. On a 1 or 2 it continues the fight, and there's a +1 die roll modifier because the Grand National Assembly event has not been triggered. The result is a 4, modified to a 5, and the Turkish divisions surrender, and the Greeks occupy Edirne. Their convoy supply is not spent because no actual combat happened. Now we move on to the revolutionary movement and combat phase. We begin with the nationalist Turks. The Armenian front, the Armenians have managed to break the Turkish lines in the south and are advancing towards Erzurum. The Turks moved their 56th Division to address the salient in their lines. And they bring the 41st Infantry Division to plug the gap in their lines, and they'll be launching an attack against the Armenians that broke through. Finally, the Turks used their cavalry regiment to plug the gap in the north. The Turks have a strategic movement capability of 6 units per turn. Strategic movement occurs between Turkish-controlled cities, and units conducting strategic movement cannot move after arriving to their destination city. The Turks will use strategic movement to redeploy their 10th Kafkas Infantry Division from Samsun to Erzurum in the Armenian front. The Turks in the area around Ankara now move against the rebels. Their 12th Division approaches the rebels' position from the southeast, and the newly arrived 14th Cavalry Division approaches from the west. Finally, the 55th Infantry Division also join in the fight. Not wanting to leave Ankara ungarrisoned, the 23rd Division in Konya marches all the way to Ankara. In the front with the Greeks, the Turks moved the 15th Infantry Division to plug the hole in their lines. The weakest position on the Greek line is here, to the west of Balıkesir. So the Turks reinforced their strength in Balıkesir with an irregular regiment, and their 9th Kafkas Division and Ataturk also joined their forces there. Meanwhile, to the south, the Turks reinforced the 57th Infantry Division with irregulars. And finally, the 60th Infantry Division marches into the line with the 11th Infantry Division. Now we move on to the Turkish combat phase. And we begin with the combat in the Armenian front. 3 Turkish infantry divisions attacked Armenian forces in the mountains to the southeast of Erzurum. The Turkish forces number 7 combat factors, the Armenians 2 defense factors, but the Armenians are defending in mountains. That's a 2-column shift to the left, but the Turks will be using their supply column. So the final odds are 2-1. We roll 1d6. The roll is a 1. 2 step losses on the Turkish side. The Armenians suffer no step losses. So the Turks reduce 2 of their 3 divisions, and the attack was a failure, and now the supply convoy is eliminated. On to the fighting around Ankara against the Turkish rebels. The final odds are 3-1. We roll 1d6. The roll is a 2. Each side loses a step. The rebels lose one of their regiments, and the Turks reduce the 55th Infantry Division. But they're still rebels near Ankara. The Turks have not been getting the results that they were hoping for, neither in the Armenian front. They were not able to eliminate the rebels, and they still have 1 attack in the Greek front. The Turks have 6 factors, the Greeks 3, that would be 2-1 with Ataturk. It's 3-1, but because the Greeks have a supply convoy adjacent to the defender, the attack is a 2-1 attack, and we roll 1d6. And the roll is a 3. Each side loses 1 step. The Greek 13th Division is reduced, and the Turks eliminate their regiment of irregulars. And that concludes the Turkish combat phase. On to the Bolsheviks' movement and combat phase. Bolsheviks, they don't have enough strength to launch an all-out assault on the Georgian front. However, they advanced their 28th Infantry Division to the line, and from there, that division together with the 39th will launch an attack against the irregular forces that are manning the Georgian lines. The attack begins at 4-1, and it's reduced to 2-1 because the defenders are in mountains, but increased to 3-1 because the Bolsheviks are using their supply column at Vladikavkaz to support the attack. The Bolsheviks now used their air support marker. The air support results, the die roll of 2 increased to 3 recon. With the recon result, the Bolshevik 18th Cavalry Division joins in the attack, and the final odds are now 6-1. We roll 1d6. The result is a 5. 4 factors are lost on the defense side, and no steps are lost by the attackers. 28th Division occupies the vacated hex, and the supply column is spent. And now the line in the mountains between Georgia and Bolshevik Russia has been flanked. And that concludes spring of 1920. The Armenian front, the Armenians have broken through, and the Turks failed to regain their losses or push them back. On the Greek front, the Greeks were able to exploit the Turkish weaknesses in the south and gain some ground there. Meanwhile, Ataturk failed in breaking the Greek line in the north. Meanwhile, Greek forces overran Edirne, causing the Turkish garrison there to surrender. And Turkish rebels spawned near Ankara, and substantial Turkish units were not able to wipe them out. Meanwhile, in the Georgian front, the Bolsheviks have gained some ground and have begun to outflank the Georgian defenses in the north. Now we move on to the summer of 1920, and the Bolshevik 9th Army units that had been withdrawn will be returned. So, will the Turks be able to stabilize at least the situation in the Armenian front? At the same time, will they finish off the rebels near Ankara? And can they keep a cohesive line and contain the Greeks? And how long can the Georgians hold their ground? Stick around for the next episode of The War for Turkish Liberation. This is Stuka Joe, signing off for now. Thanks for watching.